Hello, everybody. I am so excited to be live with you right now. My name is Pamela. I'm the CEO of Media Savvy Citizens. And today, it's fitting to talk about media and self care and what that we're going to explore that for a little bit. We have a lovely guest with us today. Her name is Anne Marie Emanuele. She is a semi retired educator who brings over two decades of meditation experience. She is managing and the CEO of Mindful Frontiers. It's a meditation center in Taos, New Mexico. It is focused on teaching and coaching families with children, adults, teachers, and focusing on the benefits of present moment awareness. Welcome, Anne Marie.
Thank you, Pamela. I'm really glad to be here. I'm really happy to do this with you.
Yeah, me too. I'm glad we're doing this together. So, media and self care, that is our topic that we are exploring today. And, I was thinking it was an important topic as we're spending so much time on our devices and online and with the elections just having recently happened and just the times of like just plugged in to that we're living in the information age and we're there's while we have a lot of benefits there are also other things that we need to look at as far as managing our our media and our self-care and how that we can bring that into a balance. And so I was thinking about our media diets and what are what has shifted for us since we are have all have a stay at home order pretty much. It feels like for a long time, and a lot of us are schooling online and working from home and et cetera, et cetera. And so thinking about the media diet and thinking about what what it all entails, like what we're doing with our diets. And I thought maybe you could tell us what you do for your media diet on a daily basis and how what that looks like for you now.
Yeah, thanks. I'm really glad that you asked this question because, to be honest, I haven't really looked at like my diet of media. I haven't done like a food journal. So I think I'm going to do it for real after this. I'm really going to sit down and see. But I did kind of look it over, and of course I'm using the internet, and I'm online for work, and I'm also online for self care and lots of personal learning as I've started this new venture. And so I figured that I was probably doing work, which for me is like communication, business related communication, marketing, that kind of thing, probably about 3 to 4 hours a day. And then self-care and what I call personal learning, kind of the personal expansion of using the internet. I mean, it's an information tool. Um, that I'm probably spending about 3 to 4 hours a day as well. So if we add that up, that's at least 6 to 8 hours right there. And then I thought about my social networking, and I'm probably melding it because we all keep our phones next to our computers, and I'm probably doing a little bit of each. But I would say about a couple hours a day. I'm not a real big social media person, but I use it for my business, and I use it as a way to communicate with the people in my life that I want to keep in touch with. Entertainment. The only real entertainment I came up with is that I do like to watch TV. At the end of the day, I like to sit and I do handwork. I do like crocheting and knitting. That's another self-care thing. But it's only about an hour a day. I'm not a real big entertainment person. I don't watch movies. We don't have a Netflix account. So we just happen to, that's just not somewhere where we're spending a lot of time. And then news, I've made a conscious effort at one point this year to kind of not really watch a lot of news, but my husband really likes to, so he keeps me up to date with like the latest. But we do like to watch some news on TV. That's where we go. So like BBC or PBS, and that's probably about an hour 3 times a week or something. And so then I thought, well, then what else, what's the rest of my day look like? And I do get up early. I like to get up early. I like to check out the sunrise every day and greet the day. I get my coffee and I meditate like around 7:30 every morning. And of course, now that I'm semi-retired, it's really kind of nice. I don't really have to start my real work day till about 10. So that's kind of nice.
That's
But
great.
I like to exercise, so I do spend some time in there. So that kind of, I think that's a good sort of a outline of how I spend my media diet.
Mm. Thank you. Thanks for sharing with us. I think it's good to reflect on our own media diets. Hearing about yours, and as you were speaking, I was thinking about mine. Like, well, how much time do I do on social media? Like, how much texting do I do? And which is a form of media. So, like, if media is any form of communication that is through a medium, right, versus
Yeah,
face to face,
right.
then we're doing a lot of that right now. We're
Absolutely.
texting with our friends and family. We're
Yep.
using Zoom for school and work, and and exploring and learning, and we are some people are have the TV on all
Yeah.
day,
Yeah.
and that's part of their diet. And whereas like youth were spending an average of about 9 hours a day before COVID, I don't know what the amount is now, because
Yeah.
that was when they were physically at school, and some of them couldn't, an average like teenager was using somewhere between 9 and 10 hours a
Mhm.
day. So so this brings the topic of self-care, and how do we self-care? And I'm curious to know some of the things you do for self-care, so that we can start with, as you're speaking, we can listen to you, but also reflect on our own self-care and like what self-care looks like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's self-care because of the word self in there. I think it's a very personal thing. And I think that it's good for all of us to think about what's important. What do we need to take care of ourselves? Because that's what self-care means. And so for me, I like to balance out, because I'm passionate about meditation. I like to balance out the stillness with the movement, because I'm also a big exercise person. And I exercise pretty much every morning, either walk or bike or jog, depending on the weather and how I'm feeling that day. Um, and I also really like spending time alone. And I've realized this time of the social distancing and mainly the isolation, but also the cooped up, we're all at home together, that my time alone has become even more important because we're all together. I only have a 3-person family, but we have a small house and we're each in our own room. And I really do like my time in my bedroom. So time alone is important for me. I like to read or meditate, or I'll be on media sometimes. When I'm doing that, I'll go and check out some of the wisdom teachers that I connect with and see what they have to say about meditation or self-improvement or whatever. Um, and I love to be creative. So my own thing that I do for myself really is creativity. So it's everything from cooking, making jam, baking. Exercise is a type of creativity, but mainly it's things that I do with my hands. So I just love to do crochet and knitting and cross stitch, and I've always just loved doing that. I always have a project going.
That's so cool.
Um, and then, of course, dark chocolate. That's like big on my list. I have to have dark chocolate every day.
That's an interesting one that I would
Yeah,
that falls into the self-care routine.
I know it is interesting because some people would say it's candy, but to me, I just really, I don't know. There's something about having a square of dark chocolate every day that really
Oh,
helps me.
oh, thank you for sharing that. Is there anything else for self-care, or does that cover
Um,
the
the
span?
only other thing, I kind of mentioned it before, but I do like to get up early, not as early as I did when I had to go to school, but I'm usually up right either before or right at the sunrise because I
Oh,
love
that's
starting
so
the day
lovely. Yeah.
seeing the sunrise.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And I think, like I said, through hearing you, it's funny that you mentioned chocolate. It helped me like reflect around like my own self-care, like what am I doing? And also thinking about like, well, what do other people actually do
Yeah.
for self-care and what do they consider to be self-care? Maybe taking a hot bath might be some
Sure.
self-care, or going for a walk, or taking your dog for a walk,
Absolutely.
could be self-care. But also, um, I'm curious, like sometimes we do self-care with media as well, right? You were saying
Mhm.
like you might
Yeah.
watch a yoga video, or you
Yep.
might, so like how we're using media, and how are we using these tools
Yeah.
for either our learning or for our own self-care, which is there's a lot out there right now that is available to us and accessible to us, and and how cool that is, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
and so I'm also curious to know, since we're talking about media and self-care, whether you have any tips as far as how we can become a little bit more aware, as far as like what we can bring into our day, our day to day, and as to like while we're using media or how we're interacting in our world, like are there tips for us to become more aware about how how to do it better, how to be more mindful?
Yeah, yeah. Well, coming from a mindfulness background, and meditation, but mindfulness is a big part of it. Um, there's some pretty simple things that people can do to break up the break up the time that we're stuck at the on the screen or using media. And one very simple, powerful one would be what we call the 3 breath break. And that is when we simply take a break. It can be random or it can be scheduled into the day, but it has to do with awareness. So you either have to schedule it to make it happen, or the mindfulness part of it is that you would need to be aware of what you're doing and when it's time to take a break. So it's either you force the break or you choose when you're going to make the break. And you just sit and you take 3 breaths. And so wherever you happen to be, you just stop. And I like to close my eyes because that's how I do meditation, but you don't have to close your eyes. And I just take 3 breaths, in the nose and out the mouth. That's been proven. The breathing out from the mouth, well, the nose as well, but the mouth seems to be really powerful to disengage the parts of our brain that get stuck in emotions. So the breathing in and just letting it out really helps to kind of settle the body. It's good when we're stressed out. And sometimes we're on the computer and we don't realize that we're actually really stressed out. And so that awareness is the part that's really key, is how do we bring our attention to our body and recognize when we need to take the break. And so sometimes we just have to schedule it. Like every hour, I'm going to take 3 breaths or a
Mm,
5 minute break or something like that. And
mm.
the 3 breaths is really very powerful because breathing itself is powerful. And we don't really breathe deeply um, unless we think about it and we do it.
Right. And I love what you said, like some people might need to schedule that.
Yeah.
And those are some great tips for,
Yeah.
taking the 3 breaths. And
Yep.
as you were saying it, I just took the minute, the
Yeah.
time to actually
Yeah. It's quick. It's
take the
not like,
breaths, which
yeah.
is and I think that's part of that becoming aware, right? Of
Yeah.
like,
Okay, here I go.
and and so this kind of made me think about like how our mind tends to travel around, but then also like how we travel around, how we are physically in one spot. I am personally on
Yeah.
my computer and I'm supposed to be working on something, but then an hour later and I'm like working, like looking at, researching something else. I'm somewhere else that was not my intention, right?
Right.
Wasn't really where I was meaning to go. And I think maybe that three breaths, you know, if you have like scheduled time of I'm going to work on this project for 20 minutes or an hour or 40 minutes,
Mhm.
and then set, you know, a timer, like as you, and then take the three breaths to like reorient. I love that idea.
Yeah.
And so
Well, the
thank you
yeah,
for
the three
sharing that.
you brought up what's important about what you just brought up, and it's actually part of the three breath break, is the awareness of, okay, what am I doing right now? What was my intention when I sat down at the computer? Was it to research, or was it to write this proposal, or to check my email? So the three breaths can also be a time when we check in with our bodies of like, okay, am I feeling tense? Am I like spacing out? Am I tired? You know, that mental fatigue we get sometimes we're sitting for too long at the computer.
Mhm.
And that can be also part of the three breath, is like, okay, what am I actually not necessarily supposed to be doing, but what was my intention? What was the reason I sat down right now? And that, take the three breaths, figure it out, and then come back to it or make a change. Decide, I don't really want to be working on that. I'm going to go do this instead. And that's awareness, and it's healthy.
Thank you. Thanks
Yeah.
for that reassurance. um, and it, you know, I guess I was thinking too, as far as like meditation and you know, and being aware, being mindful, as I was thinking about like what we were going to discuss, and I then thought about like sacred, like,
Yeah.
you know, like things that are sacred, right? And like, do we have, you know, if, you know, what is sacred for us, and like how, I mean, I'm curious to know what is sacred, I guess, for you, as far as like, you know, what you hold sacred to, and that's a huge part, I think, that informs like how do we stay balanced, or even having that conversation with ourselves.
Right, right. Well, I think that those self-care ideas, I call them vital needs. Um, we can say that it's what's sacred to us. The word vital need is just another way of looking at it. It means, what do we need? What do we need in our day to make for us to feel better and to feel satisfied and maybe even to feel joyous? What are those things that are sacred, that are vital? And, so for me, if it's exercise, if I don't have exercise, I'm pretty grumpy. Um, so the balance between, like I said earlier, the stillness and the movement, I definitely have to have movement. So if I'm sitting at the computer too long, then I need to get up. I would, that would be a reminder for me, is I've got to get up and go walk around, or even just go outside and get some movement. Um, I just thought of something that came to mind, is when I was still teaching, I used to walk around the school a lot. And I would be walking from one place to the other, and I'd be thinking, and I realized, they say that there are students who are what we call kinetic learners, where they have to move. I think I have some of that. I think that's definitely a vital need, and a part of me that, um, you can call it restlessness or whatever, but I do need to move. So that's sacred. But the stillness is also sacred. So alone time and still time, where I can just not have thoughts, or at least try not to. It's not that easy, but to just sit and breathe and feel the body and touch, like, what part of my body's touching the chair, or when I'm walking, feeling my feet on the ground. So that's important. And everybody has their own, you know, um, the dark chocolate thing. I mean, people might have something that they really, really need each day, and it could be food. That's okay, I think. But um, we can take it further. And I think it is really good for people to, for human beings, especially now that we're stuck at home, is to think, what is really important? What is sacred each day? What do I absolutely need to be healthy and feel balanced? And it's a
Yeah.
good exploration. It's a good reflection to have.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And yeah, and thanks for sharing that, right? Like it's, you're talking about like, well, what do I, what is sacred to me, and the things outside of media. And then I also was thinking about the media itself, like where does
Yeah.
it belong, and what spaces are sacred, right? So
Well,
mealtime and family time to
yes.
me is sacred. And so the media doesn't belong at the table in my dining room. Like
Yes.
if the phone rings, it doesn't matter.
Right. We don't
And
answer.
also, I do have my phone like in my bedroom, but there's not activity. Like it's
Yeah.
just there for like in case whatever there's an emergency, but there's no activity. I'm not like on my computer, etc. in my
Right.
bedroom. No
Yeah.
media in the
Yeah.
bedroom, and that's sacred.
That's it.
So there are like these sacred spaces where media belongs and it doesn't belong. And
Absolutely.
so that's something else, or I don't know if it's a sacred, but it's like just the boundaries,
Yeah. It's the
it's more of a
boundaries. I
boundary
think,
issue.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's about, and I think everyone makes those determinations for themselves. Certainly, research would say that, you should turn off your devices, X number of hours before you go to bed and all that. But I think ultimately it's a personal decision, and maybe what we would call challenge by choice. Like, challenge yourself to make it a little bit uncomfortable at first
Yeah.
until it becomes a habit. And then it
Yeah.
pretty soon it's like, oh, like some families have on Sunday afternoon 2 hours where we put away our devices, and they
Hmm.
decide that's what they're going to do. And at first it's so hard. And then pretty soon it's like, oh, wow, I'm not
It's a
missing it.
gift, right? And I think we don't realize that we're giving ourselves a gift, or we're giving our
Yeah.
children a gift by not, by providing a space where it's just quiet from
Yeah.
devices, and
Yeah.
media and television and
Absolutely.
stimulation.
And
Um,
really quickly, I thought of something else though, when we're talking about the sacred and all that. I actually realized that being in touch with my family that lives in Europe through social media actually is really important to me.
yeah.
So it's not that it's sacred as much as, and it's not necessarily a self-care thing, but it is something that if I didn't have access to that, I'd miss it. I'd really miss not being in touch with them.
Yeah, and I think, and maybe that is part of, is it self-care? I mean, to have connection is important,
Connection,
right?
connection.
Yeah. And so to, be intentional, like you were saying about like, what am I doing? What does this device afford me, right? What's the
Yeah,
meaning? And for you, social media is a way to connect, with your family, etc.
right.
So I just want to thank you so much for this
Oh,
conversation. It was so
great,
lovely and insightful.
great.
And I appreciate you coming on today and chatting with us. And um, I guess if you have any last words, parting words
Sure.
before we
I,
say goodbye.
sure. So, we're talking about maybe changing habits, or maybe looking at things that we're doing, and maybe if we want to tweak it a little bit. And so I think what I'd like to say in the whole mindset of mindfulness is be gentle and be kind to yourself as you're trying to change things. Be Have compassion for yourself that it might be hard at first, and if you don't master it the first day, there's always tomorrow, the next sunrise, the next day. Try it again, and pretty soon that repetition, it will become a habit. So maybe just pick one thing that you want to change at first, like one thing, work on that for a bit, and then see what the next thing is. But don't.
I'm going to work on the 3 breaths.
All right. Everybody can do that. Everybody definitely.
Yeah.
So,
Well, thank you
yeah,
so much.
you're welcome. You're welcome. I've enjoyed being here with you.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. Maybe we'll chat again another time.
You bet. Anytime you want. It's
Okay.
a pleasure.
Bye. Thank
Bye
you.
bye.